Great Lakes Prepping here. So we're on about day, let's call it 7 of the social distancing, isolation, quarantine, whatever you want to call it, for this whole COVID-19 coronavirus thing. And I'm starting to get a little bit bored, but you know, there's plenty of stuff I could be doing around this house. But today I decided I want to cook something tasty. And you know, I've got plenty of food and supplies here at the old Great Lakes Prepping bunker, but I wanted something a little different. And looking around at what I had, what kind of ingredients that I have that maybe I won't really do much else with, I've decided I'm gonna make some barbecue baked beans. I say baked beans, they're not really gonna be baked. I'm gonna do it all on the stovetop, but using a few miscellaneous ingredients, a little bit of fresh vegetables that I ought to use before they go bad anyway. And of course, you know, I've got plenty of my dried kidney beans in the old pantry. So this will be a little experimental, but I think it's going to be tasty. And yeah, let's get started. All right, we're going to get started by cooking up 3 strips of diced bacon. Now that this bacon's releasing some of its fat, we're going to use it to also saute 2 celery stalks and a pretty small yellow onion. Alright, our bacon's just about cooked and our onions and celery are starting to get a little translucent, so now we're going to move on to the sauce. Alright, now we're using a barbecue sauce as our starting point here. I've actually mixed a couple of different kinds of sauce, one that's a little bit more of a bold flavor, and then just some good Sweet Baby Ray's. And I'm starting with about 3/4 of a cup of this, and I'm going to add a few ingredients. First, really just about 1 tablespoon of a dry rub. I'm going to use my Detroit steak seasoning. Again, just about not quite a tablespoon for the batch that I'm making. Maybe about like that. Then not quite a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Yeah, about like that. I'm going to go with about 1/2 tablespoon of Cajun seasoning. Any kind of Cajun seasoning is good. Yeah, it looks about right. Now I'm just going to go with about a splash of liquid smoke. About like that, I guess. And just a little bit of real maple syrup. Doesn't matter what kind. Yeah, about like that. You could use some honey if you like instead, or in addition to. I'm going to go with, well, we'll call it a heaping tablespoon of tomato paste. And then roughly 1/2 cup of brown sugar. My problem is that the brown sugar I had open was solidified into pretty solid hunks. So this will break apart once this starts cooking. So I'll wait till everything's in the pan before I throw this in. And then I'm just going to stir this all up real good and get it into a saucepan. Oh, I almost forgot an ingredient. And that's about 1/4 to a 1/2 cup of beer. I think that something like an amber ale or a brown ale works best for this, but I don't happen to have any of that right now, so I'm going to just splash in a little bit of this porter. And I'm just going to sort of eyeball it until this gets to about the consistency I like. We're not going with exact science today. Alright, I got all this sauce moved over into a saucepan, and I'm going to go ahead and add these chunks of brown sugar. And I'll probably heat this and keep stirring it just until about all this brown sugar breaks apart and dissolves in. Well, this brown sugar is starting to break down in there. I'm going to go ahead and add in my bacon, onions, and celery. I'm just going to continue cooking this on low heat and stirring it pretty much constantly before I add the beans. Now I've had about, I don't know, we'll call it half a quart of my dried beans I've been soaking overnight, and I'm going to strain those real well and let them drain into the sink before I add them in here. And I'm not going to just dump all of them in. I'm going to kind of put a little at a time until this thing seems like it's about, I don't know, enough beans for the amount of sauce that I've made. Well, that sugar's pretty much broken down now, and this is bubbling real nicely, so I'm going to start adding in some beans. I'm just going to go a little at a time. Turn this down a little more. That sauce is smelling really good. I'm sure I could have used a different kind of beans for this, but I've gotten more of these kidney beans than anything, so I'm going to use them. I want there to be plenty of that barbecue sauce to go around after these are done cooking. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer for quite some time. I'm not sure how long exactly. It depends how softened up these beans got soaking overnight. So I'll probably start with about half an hour, stirring very regularly, and then we'll see where we're at. Alright, and here's our final product. I ended up letting these simmer for a bit over an hour because the beans weren't quite as soft as I wanted. I should have soaked them longer, and you know, some of my beans I've had stored for quite some time, and the longer you store them, the less they want to soften up for you. So it was kind of actually a lesson for me that next time I use my beans for anything, I should probably soak them for a lot longer, or even boil them for some time before I try to use them for anything. But the flavor's really good. I'm really happy with this sauce that came out. You know, a lot of it, of course, will depend on what kind of barbecue sauce you use. I used for this dish about 1/4 of this Rufus Teague sauce and about 3/4 Sweet Baby Ray's. This Rufus sauce was a Christmas gift from a friend of mine. It's really tasty, but it's very bold. Very little goes a long way. It has a very strong, even spicy flavor to it. So it definitely comes out in the bean dish. I'm glad I didn't use more than I did of it. But you could use whatever kind of barbecue sauce you like. Even a thinner, like, rib sauce would probably be pretty good for this. You might just have to let it thicken up a little longer. But yeah, all in all, flavor's really good. I'm pretty happy with how it came out, considering I was just sort of making it up as I go. So that's it. Hopefully you guys are passing the time with your own projects and, you know, dig into them preps and try some new recipes with your stored foods. And let me know about it in the comments. Until next time, this is Great Lakes Prepping.